Awaken your spirit, chosen ones. People aren't hard to read. They're just convinced you're not paying attention. If only they knew. Because every time you walk into a room, something strange happens. Conversations shift, glances tighten, and suddenly everyone is hyper-aware of the fact that you see more than you're supposed to. It's almost funny. You're not doing anything dramatic. You're not wearing a cape. You're not holding a crystal ball. And last time you checked, you definitely weren't hired as a mind reader. Yet somehow people stare at you like you've just accessed a secret file labeled classified human behavior. And here's the wild part. According to behavioral researchers, over 90% of communication happens beneath the surface, in tone, timing, micro-reactions, contradictions, and the subtle things people reveal without meaning to. Most people let that 90% slip right past them. You don't. That's why your presence rattles people without you saying a word. They can't understand how you call things out before they fully form, how you respond to what they intended instead of what they said, or how you connect dots they didn't even realize were on the page. To them, it feels like you're pulling answers out of thin air. To you, you're just paying attention like a responsible adult. Something society clearly wasn't prepared for. There's a quiet suspense in the air whenever you make a move, because people know you don't act randomly. You strike with purpose, with accuracy, with a kind of internal logic that makes them whisper, "How did they know that?" And the funny part is, you're not trying to be mysterious. Half the time you're just minding your business, sipping your drink, and suddenly someone is scanning your face like a detective, wondering if you've already pieced together their entire life story. This introduction isn't about hype, it's about truth. Some people navigate the world on autopilot. You navigate it like someone who actually reads the manual. So let's step into a world where intuition meets observation, where insight feels supernatural even though it's built on skill, and where every move you make forces people to question something they rarely question: how much you've already noticed. Number 1. You read patterns people don't realize they're repeating. Most people think they're unpredictable, like they're a walking mystery with no formula. But the truth is, humans are surprisingly consistent in the smallest ways, and that's where your power lies. You notice the micro patterns everyone else overlooks, the way they pause before answering, the subtle shift in their tone when they're uncomfortable, the tiny habits they repeat without even thinking. These aren't obvious clues. They're invisible threads running through everything they do, and you've learned to see them clearly. You recognize that someone who claims to be spontaneous actually has a rhythm, and someone who insists they're unpredictable leaves a trail of consistency in their decisions, timing, and reactions. When others act, you aren't just watching the surface, you're mapping the underlying current. You spot the patterns before they become obvious, which makes your insight feel almost psychic. A friend might say something casual, a co-worker might behave a little differently, or a stranger might slip up in a tiny gesture. And to them, it's meaningless. To you, it's a clue, a signal, a piece of a bigger puzzle. You're not guessing. You're connecting dots that everyone else doesn't even realize exist. Because of this, your reactions and predictions seem effortless, even flawless. People start asking, "How did you know?" But they have no idea that the answer isn't luck. It's observation, timing, and the ability to notice what they ignore. You don't just see what they do, you see the patterns they leave behind like footprints in sand, subtle but impossible to erase. You understand repetition at a level they can't even process consciously, and that makes every interaction you have feel like you're playing a game they didn't even know existed. Reading patterns isn't about judgment, it's about awareness. It's the skill of seeing what's consistent in chaos and understanding human behavior on a level that makes others feel exposed without you ever saying a word. You know the rules before anyone else even notices the game is being played, and that's why your every move leaves them questioning their own instincts. Number 2. You don't listen for words, you listen for intentions. Most people hear words and stop there, taking them at face value. But words are often just noise, a surface-level distraction from what's really happening underneath. You've learned to ignore the chatter and focus on the invisible force behind it, the intention. You notice the slight hesitation before someone speaks, the way their eyes dart when they lie, the way they emphasize certain phrases while avoiding others. Those tiny signals reveal more than an hour of talking ever could. While others are trapped in the literal meaning of words, you're reading the blueprint of why someone is saying them at all. People are constantly performing, trying to control how they're perceived. They use words as a shield, thinking they can manipulate perception with clever phrasing or rehearsed lines. But intentions can't be faked. They leak in tone, body language, timing, and choice of details. You've trained yourself to pick up on those leaks instinctively. When someone says one thing but subtly acts in another way, you notice it immediately. That awareness gives you an edge because you respond to the reality of their intentions, not the illusion of their words. You see the hidden agenda, the unspoken fear, the quiet ambition, and you adjust accordingly, often before they even realize they've revealed it. This skill is subtle, but it's devastating in its effectiveness. People start to feel exposed around you without understanding why. They tell themselves you must be reading their mind, but what you're really doing is observing, interpreting, and responding to what's real. The intention behind the performance. They leave traces of truth in every sentence, every gesture, and you've become fluent in that language. Listening for intention means you're always one step ahead. You don't need confrontation or dramatic revelations to understand someone's motives. You perceive the invisible currents that drive behavior, and you act accordingly. That's why your insights feel uncanny to others, why your reactions always seem perfectly timed, and why people leave interactions wondering how you could see through them so completely. You aren't guessing, you're translating human intention in real time, turning subtle observation into undeniable advantage. Number 3. You calculate outcomes while others are still reacting. Most people live in the moment, reacting to what's happening without thinking past the next step. You don't. You're constantly running mental simulations, predicting how situations will unfold before anyone else has even processed what's happening. When others are still blinking in surprise, you've already seen 3 moves ahead, and that foresight makes your actions look effortless, almost impossible to anticipate. It's not magic, it's strategic awareness combined with relentless attention to detail. You notice patterns, anticipate reactions, and measure probabilities in real time, and by the time people realize what's happening, you've already adjusted for it. This skill comes from observing cause and effect in human behavior over and over again. You've seen the same mistake repeated in 100 variations, so when it happens again, you recognize the trajectory immediately. You understand that every decision has a ripple, and you're calculating the ripple before anyone else even knows a wave is forming. While others are reacting emotionally or instinctively, you're thinking analytically, weighing options, and predicting the moves that will maximize outcomes and minimize surprises. Your decisions aren't impulsive. They're the result of foresight that most people assume only exists in movies or in minds far superior to theirs. People around you start to notice it. They see you responding before they've fully formed their plan, and they can't figure out how you knew. You appear calm, collected, and precise, but underneath it all, your mind is running 1,000 calculations in seconds, constantly adjusting for the unknown. That's why your timing is perfect, why your moves feel premeditated yet effortless, and why people leave interactions wondering how you seem to predict the future when really you're just one step ahead. Calculating outcomes while others are still reacting isn't just a skill, it's a way of seeing the world differently. You don't get caught in the chaos. You see the patterns, anticipate the reactions, and make choices that leave others stunned, wondering how it is that you always seem to know what's coming next. It's the ultimate edge in understanding and navigating human behavior. Number 4. You understand human nature more than you trust human promises. People say what they think you want to hear. They make promises with a smile, reassure you with words, and try to convince you that everything is fine. Most people take that at face value, trusting the polished version of reality. You don't. You've learned that words are cheap, that intentions reveal themselves in actions long before promises are kept. You watch patterns, notice repeated behaviors, and understand that human nature doesn't lie. People might claim to change, to mean well, or to keep their word, but their actions and the tendencies behind them always tell the real story. That's what gives you your edge. You read the truth that others refuse to see because they are blinded by hope, politeness, or social expectation. You've trained yourself to observe the small, almost invisible things, the inconsistency between what someone says and how they behave, the tiny contradictions that slip through their carefully constructed image, the habitual tendencies that return no matter how much they insist otherwise. You know that someone who has repeatedly avoided responsibility isn't suddenly going to change just because they've apologized. You understand that fear, greed, insecurity, or pride influence people far more than logic or moral reasoning. Recognizing these patterns doesn't make you cynical. It makes you accurate. You respond to reality, not to comforting illusions, and that's why your judgment feels so sharp to others. This awareness also gives you a kind of quiet confidence. While others are constantly disappointed or caught off guard, you move through interactions with clarity. You can predict behavior, prepare for outcomes, and act in ways that make people wonder how you always seem to know what's coming. They're left asking questions, analyzing their own words and actions, while you navigate the room with a calm certainty born from observation rather than hope. Understanding human nature more than trusting promises is about seeing beneath the surface, valuing patterns over words, and recognizing that the truth of a person exists in what they do repeatedly, not what they say once. That insight allows you to operate in a world of uncertainty with unmatched precision, and it's why your awareness feels almost supernatural to those around you. Number 5, you pay attention to what people avoid, not what they present. Everyone is busy showing the world their polished version of themselves. They highlight successes, spin stories, and craft an image designed to impress or protect. Most people only see the surface. They listen to what's said, watch what's displayed, and miss the truth hiding in the gaps. You, however, have trained yourself to notice the opposite. You look at what's avoided, what's left unsaid, and what people are trying to hide. Those are the real clues. People expose themselves more in what they dodge than in what they share, and that's where your insight comes from. It's in the pauses, the sudden topic changes, the vague answers, and the overcompensating details. You pick up on these subtleties immediately. Someone might be bragging about an achievement, but you notice what they skipped, what they didn't mention, what they're clearly insecure about, what they hope you won't ask. That silence, that avoidance, speaks louder than any boast or explanation. While others are dazzled by the words, you're reading the spaces between them. That's why your understanding of people feels almost impossible. You're not just reacting to what they show you, you're interpreting the signals they didn't even know they were sending. This skill gives you an almost unfair advantage in every interaction. You see the hidden motives, the weak spots, the unspoken fears that guide people's behavior without them realizing it. While others focus on trying to appear impressive or confident, you understand the underlying truth, and that allows you to anticipate reactions, predict decisions, and respond in ways that feel uncanny. Paying attention to avoidance over presentation isn't about judgment or manipulation. It's about clarity. It's about understanding reality rather than being distracted by appearances. The world teaches people to perform, but you've learned to notice what's omitted, and that's where the real story always lives. Recognizing the unspoken gives you the insight that others can't see, and that's why your perception of people always seems deeper, sharper, and frighteningly accurate. Number 6. You mastered emotional distance without becoming emotionally numb. Most people either let emotions control them or shut down completely to protect themselves. You, however, have found a rare balance. You observe, analyze, and respond without getting trapped in the chaos of feelings, yet you remain fully human, fully aware. Emotional distance for you isn't detachment, it's clarity. You don't need to react impulsively to someone's anger, manipulation, or praise. You process it, understand it, and use that understanding to navigate the situation intelligently. People around you often misread this as coldness or mystery, but in reality, it's a deliberate mastery over your own inner world. This skill allows you to see situations as they are, not as others want you to see them. When someone tries to provoke, charm, or deceive, you're not blinded by the drama. You notice patterns in behavior, shifts in tone, and underlying intentions. You feel the emotions of those around you enough to understand and predict them, but you're never carried away. That balance is what makes your insight feel so sharp. Others act first and think later, reacting from emotional impulses. You, on the other hand, operate with precision because you maintain perspective. It also gives you an unmatched sense of timing. You know when to engage, when to observe, and when to wait. People who rely on emotion often reveal too much or act in ways that backfire. You use your emotional awareness strategically, reading situations and responding in ways that others don't anticipate. That's why your intuition seems flawless, and why people often leave interactions wondering how you stayed so composed while seeing everything they tried to hide. Mastering emotional distance without becoming numb isn't just about control. It's about seeing the truth behind behavior without losing your humanity. You navigate life with awareness, empathy, and precision, understanding people on a level that others can't reach because they are too caught up in their own emotional currents. That rare ability makes you almost untouchable in observation, prediction, and understanding. And it's the silent force behind the uncanny way people ask, "How did you know?" Number 7. You store information without trying to, and recall it exactly when needed. Most people struggle to remember details, even the ones that seem obvious at the time. Names slip, events blur, and small but important facts get lost in the shuffle. You, however, have developed a mental filing system that works without effort. Your brain absorbs details naturally, the way someone fidgets when nervous, the exact phrasing of a statement, the subtle inconsistencies in a story, and stores them like invisible threads. Then, at the perfect moment, you bring those threads together with precision, revealing insights that leave others stunned. What looks like instinct or intuition to them is actually a combination of sharp observation and flawless recall. This ability isn't about memorizing for the sake of memory, it's about understanding context. You notice the little things that others dismiss, the hesitation in a response, the way someone glances at another, the tiny contradictions that seem irrelevant until they aren't. You keep track of these details unconsciously, layering them over time, creating a mental map of behavior, tendencies, and truths. Then, when the moment calls for it, you pull the exact piece of information that matters most, and the effect is profound. People are often speechless, unable to figure out how you knew something that they didn't even consciously notice themselves. This skill also gives you foresight. Because you retain subtle information, you can anticipate actions, detect dishonesty, and predict outcomes. What others see as guesswork or reading minds is really a carefully constructed understanding built on countless small observations. You don't need to consciously try to remember. It's ingrained. You notice, you store, and you deploy with precision. Storing information effortlessly and recalling it at the right moment isn't just a talent. It's a form of power. It makes your insight appear instant, your judgment flawless, and your presence commanding. People leave conversations wondering how you seem to hold the entire scene in your head while they struggle to recall a single detail. You've turned attention and memory into a weapon, a tool that consistently leaves others asking the same question. How did you know that? Number 8. You never assume you're the smartest person in the room. You assume everyone has a tell. Most people walk into interactions thinking they have the upper hand, believing their intelligence or experience gives them control. You don't. You approach every person, every situation, with a quiet humility, knowing that the advantage isn't in thinking you're smarter. It's in observing carefully. You assume that everyone has a tell, a subtle way they reveal truth without realizing it, and that assumption changes everything. While others are busy trying to impress or prove themselves, you're quietly watching, noticing the micro-expressions, the shifts in tone, the tiny inconsistencies that betray real intentions. This perspective keeps you alert and ready. You're not blinded by ego, which means you can read people without judgment, without distraction. You understand that intelligence alone doesn't make someone unpredictable, but patterns, habits, and unconscious behaviors do. Someone might try to manipulate, to hide, or to perform, but their tell is always there. Whether it's a slight twitch, a hesitation, or a repeated phrasing, you spot it immediately. You don't need them to confess or explain themselves. Their own actions and slips do it for them. By assuming everyone has a tell, you train yourself to see beyond appearances. You notice the contradictions between words and behavior, the hidden motives beneath casual statements, and the subtle cues that indicate what people really want or fear. This skill lets you predict outcomes, anticipate moves, and respond in ways that feel almost preternatural to others. They leave thinking you must have some secret insight, when really, you've simply learned to read what they leave behind unconsciously. This approach also protects you from overconfidence. You never underestimate anyone, but you never overestimate them either. You rely on observation, not assumption, and that gives you clarity. It's a mindset that turns ordinary interactions into a map of behavior, where every micro-movement becomes a piece of evidence. That's why your awareness feels so sharp, your predictions so accurate, and your presence so unsettling. People can't help but wonder how you always seem to know what's coming, and the answer is simple. You're reading them better than they read themselves. Number 9. You use silence as analysis, not intimidation. Most people are uncomfortable with silence. They feel the need to fill every pause with words, explanations, or reactions, believing that quiet means weakness or disinterest. You don't. Silence for you isn't empty. It's a tool, a way to observe, process, and understand everything happening around you. While others panic in the quiet, you're absorbing details, noticing inconsistencies, and calculating the next move. People misread your calm as mystery or power, but the truth is, your silence is pure strategy. You're gathering the invisible threads that most people miss, connecting the dots while they are still talking. Silence allows you to see what others reveal unconsciously. When someone is nervous, defensive, or hiding something, the way they react to pauses tells you far more than any words ever could. The rushed explanations, the awkward glances, the repeated phrases, they all surface during silence and you catch everyone. While others are focused on talking to make an impression or to cover themselves, you're watching, analyzing, and understanding the truth of the situation. Your quiet becomes a lens through which behavior is magnified and exposed. This approach also gives you an unmatched sense of timing. You respond when the moment is most effective, when the insight or observation has the greatest impact. People feel the weight of your attention without you ever raising your voice. Your calm, collected presence in silence creates a space where they reveal themselves more than they intended. It's not manipulation. It's clarity. You simply wait, observe, and act when the picture is complete. Using silence as analysis means you operate on a level others rarely reach. You're not trying to dominate conversations or intimidate people with emptiness. You're reading, processing, and understanding in a way that makes your insights feel inevitable. That's why people often leave interactions with you unsettled, impressed, or even speechless. They assume you're extraordinary, when really you've simply turned silence into a weapon of understanding, and that gives you an edge they can't compete with. Number 10. You question motives before you question behavior. Most people react to what they see, taking actions at face value and forming judgments based on surface-level behavior. You don't. You understand that behavior is rarely random. It's driven by motives, fears, desires, and intentions that often hide beneath the surface. Before you respond, before you even form an opinion, you analyze why someone is acting the way they are. That's what sets you apart. While others are busy reacting to gestures, words, or appearances, you're looking at the engine behind the action, and that perspective changes everything. By questioning motives first, you see patterns others overlook. Someone might say something harsh, make a strange decision, or act inconsistently, but instead of jumping to conclusions, you dig deeper. You consider context, history, emotional triggers, and subconscious drives. That approach lets you understand behavior in a way that feels almost intuitive, though it's really just careful observation and deduction. You don't get fooled by clever words, flashy actions, or rehearsed appearances, because you know those are often masks for what's really happening underneath. This mindset gives you clarity and control in interactions. You respond strategically because your understanding is grounded in truth, not assumption. People often leave encounters with you confused because they expect reactions based on behavior alone, not the deeper reality of intention. When you act, it feels preemptive, precise, and eerily accurate because your responses align with the unseen forces guiding others. Questioning motives before behavior also protects you from being manipulated or misled. Most people act on instinct or emotion, and that makes them predictable, but only if you understand why they act. By analyzing the driving force, you turn every interaction into a map of probabilities and outcomes. You see the invisible currents that push people forward, and that insight allows you to navigate situations with confidence, precision, and impact. In the end, it's this skill, the focus on motives over mere actions, that makes your awareness feel almost supernatural. You're not guessing. You're perceiving the truth behind behavior, understanding what truly drives people, and responding in a way that leaves them questioning themselves while wondering how you always seem to know what's coming next. Number 11. You see people's insecurities before they start masking them. Most people spend their lives hiding flaws, fears, and insecurities, believing that nobody can see through the carefully constructed masks they wear. You, however, have a different vision. You notice the subtle cracks long before they become obvious, the tiny hesitation in a response, the nervous laugh that comes too quickly, the slight avoidance of eye contact when a topic hits too close to home. These aren't mistakes. They are unintentional signals, small admissions that reveal more than words ever could. while others are blinded by surface-level behavior. You see the underlying vulnerabilities with astonishing clarity. Insecurity has a rhythm, a language of its own. Someone might try to appear confident, bold, or unbothered, but the subtle tells are impossible to hide completely. A fidget, a shift in tone, a choice of phrasing, or even the avoidance of certain subjects, all of these are footprints left by insecurity. You've trained yourself to notice them instantly, connecting the dots in real time. By the time most people realize someone is nervous or uncomfortable, you already understand the source of their tension and the impact it will have on their behavior. Recognizing insecurities before they're masked gives you a distinct advantage in interactions. You understand the levers that influence decisions, the pressures that guide actions, and the fears that dictate behavior. People might leave a room thinking they successfully hid their vulnerabilities, but you already know. You see through the performance without judgment, simply observing and processing in a way that allows you to navigate situations with insight, foresight, and precision. This skill doesn't make you manipulative, it makes you aware. You operate on a level where other people's hidden realities are visible to you, giving your decisions and reactions unmatched accuracy. That's why your presence feels uncanny to others. They feel exposed, unsettled, or even impressed, without realizing that all you did was notice what they tried hardest to hide. You see the truth behind the performance, and in doing so, you hold an almost invisible power that changes the way every interaction unfolds. Number 12. You observe the emotional temperature of a room the way others check the weather. Most people walk into a space and see only what's visible: faces, gestures, and conversation. You, however, sense the undercurrent, the invisible emotional climate that shapes everything happening in the room. You can feel tension before it becomes argument, notice alliances forming before words are exchanged, and detect unease long before anyone admits it. This isn't intuition in the vague sense. It's careful observation turned instinct. You read energy, subtle shifts in body language, micro-expressions, and tone, and from that, you instantly understand the mood, the dynamics, and the hidden currents guiding everyone's behavior. Understanding the emotional temperature gives you an almost tactical advantage. You can adjust your words, your body language, and your energy to fit the situation perfectly, or deliberately disrupt it when needed. You notice the way someone's glance lingers, the brief hesitation before a response, or the small cues that betray discomfort. These tiny signals add up to a clear map of how people are feeling, thinking, and reacting. While others flounder, guessing or misreading signals, you operate with precision because you've already measured the room's invisible forces. This skill also allows you to anticipate conflict, predict alliances, and sense hidden intentions before they surface. People often act on emotion, and emotion is rarely rational, making their actions unpredictable to those who only see the surface. You, however, see the build-up, the tipping points, and the subtle signs of change. That insight allows you to navigate interactions with an accuracy that feels almost supernatural to everyone else. Observing the emotional temperature isn't about manipulation. It's about awareness and adaptability. You respond in ways that align with or counter the mood, depending on your goal. People leave interactions with you wondering how you always seem to know what's going on beneath the surface, why your timing is perfect, and why your presence shifts the room. You're not guessing, you're reading the invisible climate of human emotion, and that gives you an edge no one else even sees coming. Number 13. You don't confront people. You let their patterns indict them. Most people rush to confrontation, believing that calling someone out or forcing the truth to the surface is the only way to understand them. You don't. You understand that people reveal themselves through repetition, through habits and patterns that emerge long before any dramatic revelation. You watch quietly, noting the choices, the inconsistencies, and the subtle signals that surface over time. And then you let those patterns speak for themselves. People end up exposing their own truths without you ever having to point a finger or make a scene. This approach is powerful because it doesn't provoke defensiveness. When someone is confronted directly, they often fight back, deny, or cover up, which clouds reality. But when their own behavior reveals the truth, there's no defense, no story they can spin. They act according to who they are, not who they wish to appear to be, and every action they take confirms what you've already observed. You're simply cataloging these actions, letting their choices build a narrative that ultimately indicts them more effectively than any accusation could. It also allows you to operate with patience and precision. You don't need immediate answers or dramatic revelations. You understand that the truth reveals itself over time. By observing patterns, you can predict outcomes, anticipate reactions, and understand motives long before anyone else does. Others may miss the small signals, but you see the rhythm in behavior, the repeated mistakes, the self-sabotage, the inconsistencies that no one else notices until it's too late. This skill is subtle but devastating. People leave interactions with you unsettled, confused, or amazed because they realize you've seen everything without saying much. You don't need to fight, argue, or manipulate. The truth unfolds on its own, and your understanding of it is complete. Letting patterns indict people isn't about cruelty. It's about clarity, insight, and mastery. You see what others refuse to see, and that makes your perception feel almost uncanny, leaving people wondering how you always seem to know the truth before they even realize it themselves. Number 14. You've learned that intuition is not magic. It's accumulated evidence disguised as instinct. Most people think intuition is some mysterious gift, something that just happens without explanation. You know the truth. What feels like instinct is actually years of observation, pattern recognition, and careful analysis condensed into a single moment. Every glance you notice, every hesitation you detect, every tiny contradiction you catch adds to a mental archive. Over time, these countless fragments of information build a library of human behavior that your brain draws from instantly. When you make a gut call, it's not luck or supernatural insight. It's the quiet processing of evidence you've accumulated without even realizing it. Intuition is powerful because it operates beneath the level of conscious thought. You don't have to consciously piece together every detail. Your mind does it automatically, connecting dots so fast that it seems like you just know. You predict responses, foresee actions, and sense underlying motives because your subconscious has catalogued the patterns that others overlook. Every micro-expression, tone shift, or body movement you notice becomes a clue, and your brain files it away for future reference. The more attentive you are, the sharper this instinct becomes. What looks like a sudden revelation to others is really the result of countless observations compiled into instant understanding. This skill gives you an almost unfair advantage in interactions. People are often shocked when you call out truths they haven't even admitted to themselves, when you anticipate reactions before they act, or when your insight seems impossibly precise. They think it's magic, but it's really mastery. You've trained yourself to recognize the patterns hidden beneath ordinary behavior, and your intuition is simply the application of that knowledge in real time. Understanding intuition this way changes everything. It turns what seems random into something predictable, what seems hidden into something visible. You don't rely on guesswork. You rely on accumulated evidence applied with precision. That's why your instincts feel uncannily accurate, why your presence unsettles and impresses, and why people leave interactions wondering how you always seem to know what's coming next. You don't just have intuition, you've earned it. Conclusion. Every move you make leaves a mark, not because you're loud or flashy, but because you operate on a level most people don't even realize exists. You don't just react. You observe, calculate, and understand. You read patterns, decipher intentions, notice what's avoided, and see through the masks people wear. You stay emotionally balanced while absorbing the emotional climate of any room, remembering details others forget, predicting outcomes while others are still reacting, and letting behavior reveal truths without ever forcing them. Your intuition isn't magic. It's the culmination of observation, experience, and careful attention, sharpened to a level that leaves people asking, "How did you know?" You've mastered the subtle art of awareness. You respond with precision, insight, and timing that feels almost impossible, not because you're trying to impress, but because you see and understand what others can't. Every glance, every hesitation, every unconscious reveal is a clue, and you've learned to use them to navigate life with clarity and power. People are left awed, unsettled, or simply in admiration because you operate with a quiet mastery that goes far beyond ordinary perception. This is more than skill. It's a mindset, a way of living that transforms how you experience interactions and understand people. It's the difference between being caught in the chaos of emotion and action and moving through life with unmatched awareness and control. When you move, people notice, not just because of what you do, but because of the depth of understanding behind every action. You've become a force of insight that others can't ignore, a presence that commands awareness without ever demanding it. If you found these insights valuable, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay connected. Drop a comment sharing your thoughts or experiences, and make sure to like and share this video with anyone who wants to understand the hidden patterns in human behavior. Trust me, they'll thank you for it. Stay awakened, chosen ones.